So, some of you may have heard that Tommy Wiseau has lost his lawsuit against the producers of the documentary Room Full of Spoons, and has now been ordered to pay $750,000 in penalties and damages to the producers. So, and when I heard that, I just seriously thought, good. Thank fucking God. And I know that seems harsh, but that was my honest, visceral response. And as I think about it, and by the way, if you don't know about Tommy Wiseau or The Room, which I can't imagine that anybody who watches my videos is not aware of the cultural phenomenon that is Tommy Wiseau, if you're not aware of that, just go look up Tommy Wiseau, The Room, and, watch the Nostalgia Critics video or something like that, or, go rent The Room and watch it and help out Tommy. God knows he's going to need some, he's about to take a serious financial loss. But coming back around to the actual nuts and bolts of the discussion, like a lot of people, I discovered The Room and was enamored by it, just fascinated by it. And it's weird, but on a certain level, I kind of enjoyed it. And unironically enjoyed it, just because there was something there was something about certain scenes and certain moments within the movie that it really took me back to, like, I guess it was working off of like a sense of nostalgia, because it really took me back to like those like softcore Cinemax Showtime things that they used to show at, like, 2 o'clock in the morning on Cinemax and everything back in like the early '90s. Like the infamously cringy bedroom scenes kind of remind me of something out of Red Shoe Diaries or something like that. So there's something intrinsically nostalgic about it for me, or intrinsically appealing about it, and in an unironic way. So I actually kind of enjoyed it. That said, I still, just like everybody else, laughed right along at all of the, hysterical failings of the movie and everything. And the thing was, though, and I even went to a screening of it. Tommy was not there, but I did go to a screening of it at the Plaza Theater, and everybody threw spoons, and, the women wore neckties on their heads and everything, and I took the riff tracks on my my iPhone and listened to it while I was watching, so I could watch that in real time, and that was fun. That was cool. That was fun. But like a lot of people, as my interest shifted from The Room over to Tommy Wiseau himself, I started just having a really bad taste in my mouth, because what I saw happening, or what I found, was the appeal of these movies, I think, is often better when you don't know anything about the people who are doing it. When you don't know the actual person, when there's that disconnect, that component removed, then there's something more appealing and more fascinating about it, because it feels like it's coming from nowhere. It feels like this oddity, this dream scape that just entered your head and entered your mind out of nowhere. And there are, well, before I get into my larger soapbox, let me say, I then read The Disaster Artist by Greg Sestero, which was subsequently adapted into a movie of the same name, which starred James Franco as Tommy Wiseau. I recommend the book and the movie, The Disaster Artist, whether you're a fan of Tommy Wiseau or not. They're both fascinating. But after reading this, I really didn't want to. I lost all interest in The Room. It killed that appreciation for The Room. And granted, I mean, I don't think that it's not something that holds up to repeated viewings, obviously. I mean, it kind of runs dry very quickly. It's great to bring out and show to friends that have never seen it, but again, like I said, most people in my circles are well aware of it at this point. And I think, it's kind of like one of my favorite bands, The Residents, started out making. I mean, they evolved over time and started hiring actual musicians and everything. But they started out making this weird, demented noise music that was intentionally designed to get under people's skin and confuse people and creep people out and that sort of thing. And they made the decision to be anonymous about it. Now, granted, nobody knows who the Residents are the same way nobody knows who Lemony Snicket really is. I mean, if you look into it, it's pretty easy to figure out. But that said, their decision to be anonymous helped so much with this band whose initial appeal was just the bizarre, weird, morbid fascination of what they were doing. It helped so much because you could appreciate the thing in and of itself. It seemed like it was coming out of nowhere, as opposed to coming from the mind of a specific person, because what happens is, in so many of these cases, now the Residents knew what they were doing. I mean, they were specifically trying to do that. It was a very conscious thing. But for so many of these people, you're dealing with the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I know, obviously there's people who would levy that at me and what I do and, spin on that. But anyway, nevertheless, you are dealing, like Tommy Wiseau, you are dealing with people who are caught in the grips of the Dunning-Kruger effect. They have such an inflated, they are amateurs, rank amateurs who have such an inflated opinion of themselves and of their work that they don't, they can't see what is blatantly obvious to everybody else. And other people like this come along. Famously, Florence Foster Jenkins was an early example of this. And she was a soprano opera singer with absolutely no talent whatsoever, lived in the early part of the 20th century, and famously played Carnegie Hall singing things like the Bell Song from Lakme or the Queen of the Night aria and all of this, and just royally embarrassing herself, having the crowds roaring with laughter, and she herself completely lost in this belief that she was this brilliant, excellent virtuoso and all of that. And in the case of Florence Foster Jenkins, she had a battle with, she had been an actual opera singer earlier in her life, and she had had a bout with syphilis that affected her inner ear, and that's what screwed up her voice. But famously, Florence Foster Jenkins was a notorious pain in the ass, notoriously arrogant, notoriously convinced of her brilliance and all of that. And the thing was, she was a wealthy heiress, and she made tremendous donations to the arts. And so consequently, all of the people around her who were hoping to get donations for their projects were just constantly kissing her ass, because they didn't want to, they didn't want to have funding, several $100,000 or whatever of funding pulled from their projects and that sort of thing. So she would do things like put on 3 different recordings of the same aria, and one of which would be hers, and she wouldn't announce who sang what, and everyone would be able to tell which was hers because it was hysterically bad. And she would do this at like dinner parties and everything, and have everyone vote on which one they liked the most. Of course, everyone would immediately go to hers because they know what she wanted, what she was after, that kind of thing. And so, consequently, Florence Foster Jenkins, there was a movie made about her in recent years. I actually reviewed it on my channel, but starring Meryl Streep and Hugh Grant, and I recommended it. It was quite good. But anyway, there is something morbidly fascinating about people like Florence Foster Jenkins, where there's a sense of an inner need to have some kind of answer of why. And that sense of contradiction, we want the person behind this absurdity, to be able to explain it away to us, and that sort of thing. And the thing of it is, it really comes down to this quote from The Disaster Artist, which I actually highlighted in here. He's talking about con men, and Greg Sestero is, and it actually I highlighted it because it reminded me of another con man that I know. But anyway, it says that's the thing with con artists. They never tell you their story. They give you pieces of it and let you fill in the rest. They let you work out the contradictions and discrepancies. They let you believe that things that don't add up are what makes them interesting and special. They let you believe that in those gaps are the things that hurt and wounded them, but maybe there's nothing in those gaps, nothing but your own stupid willingness to assume the best of someone. And that really says it about what I think is happening here with people like Tommy Wiseau, like Florence Foster Jenkins. Other examples abound. Norman Bettine is a great example. Norman Bettine, if you follow, there's an episode of Down the Rabbit Hole about this, but he's the author of a book called Empress Teresa, which is this, it's this just horribly badly written attempt at it's like a maybe fantasy science fiction young adult novel maybe, but it's just extremely badly written, and people have done tons of videos about it and commented on it, and people have read it, and there's one guy who's a professional audiobook recorder that is taking time to actually do audiobook recordings of every chapter, and it's basically the literary equivalent of The Room or Florence Foster Jenkins or something like that. Another example would be Neil Breen. I actually don't have as much of a rage boner about Neil Breen, just because he himself seems very humble. He does not seem pretentious. He seems very polite, very friendly, and weirdly genuine in a way. And so because that sense of avarice is not, that avarice and that arrogance is not there, he doesn't have the same effect on me. That said, his movies are, again, falling into that hilariously bad category. But even Norman Bettine, in the tradition of Tommy Wiseau and Florence Foster Jenkins, who have this insanely elevated opinion of themselves, Norman Bettine can't seem to handle any criticism, and indeed, that is where the fandom, the ironic fandom, has sprung up around his writing. Is that he, when people make negative comments about his work, he goes on to insane degrees, writing these epic, responses to every single bit of criticism that comes through, and these things keep coming up. And we keep coming back to, it seems the formula seems to keep having, again, with the exception of Neil Breen, as far as I can tell, the formula keeps coming up where it's weird, bizarre thing that makes no sense comes out. People track down the actual creator. She turns out to be this overzealous, over-the-top, arrogant schmuck that thinks the world of themselves and is completely incapable of understanding that people are laughing at them, not with them. And so, as I think about it, I don't think this is healthy. And I think about that quote from The Disaster Artist that I just read you. And that's the thing. That's what we're all feeding into. When we get into these things and we become fascinated with the creators of these things and hold them up as ironic celebrities and everything, I think that is, and again, like I said, as someone who has dealt with, who has experienced what it's like to deal with sociopathy face-to-face and psychopathy face-to-face, that is what con artists do, and that is what con men do, is they set you up to fill in the blanks for yourself. And I think that something very unhealthy is happening in the fandoms of people like Tommy Wiseau and that kind of thing. I think that it is a very toxic, very negative relationship, and it's something that I really think we as a culture need to move away from. In the rise of YouTube and in the rise of instant uploads and that sort of thing, there's no real content filter anymore, and everybody can become instantly famous. Um, and if you need further proof of that, notice that OnlyFans has seen an extraordinary boom during the COVID-19 lockdown. And because of that, I think what we are all doing when we start elevating these people that are consumed by the Dunning-Kruger effect, when we start elevating them into what I call cringe culture, I think it comes from that place, that feeling that I had about Tommy Wiseau, the feeling that I had, looking into Florence Foster Jenkins, and all of that, of like wanting the sense, there's this inner feeling like you want this person to resolve some kind of question that you have. And you don't know what the question is. You just know that there's a sense of confusion. There's something not quite right. And it's weird, the disconnect between the level of talent that these people think they have and the level of talent that they actually have. And it's like you want that person to resolve this in some way. And the weird thing, and it's this weird impulse that gets people involved. This is what gets people involved in cults. It's what gets people involved in multi-level marketing scams and everything else that's run by a charismatic con man leader. And that is that you want that person to resolve something in your mind. But you don't, but something within you, because like that quote said, because you want to believe the best about people naturally, what you want them to do is convince you that that they actually are on point and actually do know what they're doing, and elevate. You want them to elevate you to the level where they seem to have this transcendental level of self-aggrandizement. And it's like you want them to successfully justify that. And even though everyone who has gotten into the Room fandom is getting into, nobody is watching The Room because it's serious cinema. Nobody is watching The Room because it's it's a great intellectual or artistic accomplishment. Everybody is watching The Room because they're watching The Room because it is a disaster. And the thing is, though, as we aggrandize people like Tommy Wiseau and elevate them, what we are doing, I think, is feeding into that narcissism. And it is never good to be in a relationship with a narcissistic person, a toxic person like that. And we as a culture are feeding into it. And there's something, something that I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 years. There's been a real sharp decline, but it's been a long time coming. Is that culture feels increasingly empty. It feels the culture of the world at large feels increasingly vapid, increasingly empty. In the music world, I lay that at the feet of trap music, which I think is an auditory disease, but that's another rant, another video. But culture, we seem to have lost the desire for new ground and innovation, new ground to be broken, and the avant-garde and the innovative. That seems to have gone out the window in favor of reveling in emptiness. And I think that people like Tommy Wiseau have played into that. And we, by playing into their narcissism, are deadening the culture. When you say midnight movie now, you're talking really about two things: Rocky Horror Picture Show and The Room. That's it. Those two movies. Rocky Horror Picture Show arguably, obviously, has redeeming Uh, it has redeeming artistic merit. It has good music. It's fun to watch. It's an actual well-made movie. And certainly the fandom is a blast. So I don't think there's anything toxic about that. It's just that it's what I don't remember when it came out, but it's got to be at least 40 years old, more than 40 years old now. And then we've got The Room, and that's it. That's midnight movies now. I'm not aware of any other midnight movie that has any kind of buzz around it. And think about the movies that used to be midnight movies. Eraserhead, Holy Mountain, even Pink Flamingos. These were movies that would challenge you, and I yes, I even put Pink Flamingos in that category. It actually does have a vision. It actually does. It's infinitely better made than things like The Room, and it actually challenges you, and it actually has a world of its own that it takes you into. But yeah, Eraserhead, Holy Mountain, towering classics of cinema used to come out of the avant-garde world, weird avant-garde world that was afforded to filmmakers with the so-called midnight movie, the midnight screening, where you could actually go and engage with directors that actually had a vision and actually wanted to go somewhere and do something innovative, and you were actually getting outside of the mainstream schlock for a change, and you could actually see cinema as the director wanted you to see it, not as the not as part of the movie theater's regular spiel of whatever's coming off the assembly line. It felt like you were seeing real cinema and really getting an unusual and interesting experience. Midnight cinema, midnight movies have lost all of that charm. There's nothing coming out that way anymore. I had great hopes for A24. A24 made some amazing movies. Witch was amazing. The Lobster was amazing. What else came out with A24? It's painfully on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it. But the one that I really liked that got me into A24 in the first place. Come on, I'm trying to do this in one take. Why can't I think of it? I will think of it the minute I'm done. But anyway, A24 has done some incredible stuff. And I had really high hopes for them, but then they did Midsummer, which was just a remake of The Wicker Man, and also Ghost. Ghost was good. I believe Ghost was A24. Obviously not the Patrick Swayze movie. It's a recent film, independent film that was really good. But anyway, that is going to eat at me until I remember what was the first A24 movie I saw. Was it Ex Machina? Was Ex Machina A24? Okay, anyway, that's beside the point. But in recent years, we just don't have this anymore. We don't have that avenue of expression anymore, and I think it's because it has been taken over and eaten up by things like The Room. The Room is of no value. It is not anything special. Yeah, it's weird and badly. It's weird. It falls into, the reason it falls into this category of being kind of interesting, the reason people keep watching it is because when Tommy Wiseau made The Room, he had enough people around him who actually knew what they were doing that it made it look like a real movie and a real production, and so that's why it seems bad. But go watch The Neighbors, which is it's on Hulu, and it's his shitty-ass attempt at making a sitcom, and it is absolute crap. And this is Tommy Wiseau, instead of having people around him who know what they're doing, who can kind of steer him right, this is Tommy Wiseau left completely to his own devices, and it's absolute crap. There's a character in there that she wears a bikini everywhere she goes, and that's supposed to be funny, apparently. It is unbelievably bad, and not in a fun way. In a why are you wasting our time with this crap way. And I really do hope that I'm sorry, but I really do hope that this lawsuit and the release of Roomful of Spoons can maybe start to be the end of the Wiseau phenomenon. Because I hate to wish that on anybody, but I want to hear, I want there to be excitement and buzz about actual phenomenal directors that are doing really cool, innovative stuff. It's kind of like, why did I stop going to Dragon Con? Why have I stopped going to Dragon Con and all of these conventions and everything? Because it's an empty experience now. It's like, oh, Rick and Morty was popular this year, and here's a bunch of people dressed as Rick and Morty. Okay. It's lost that palpable energy where we feel like innovation is being made and that the dreams of tomorrow are being communally shared in this space. It's not there anymore. And I think in large part it's because we keep wasting our time on nonsensical garbage. So hopefully I've made some sense. I just it's just a rant that's been on my mind lately, because it's like I find myself watching movies from, I got Prime, and I find Prime's got a lot of movies from different eras. You watch movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Like I watched The Big Sleep, or no, The Big Easy, excuse me, The Big Easy with Dennis Quaid, which is this kind of 90s era noir detective thriller. And I watched that, and I thought, it's just like I'm in this movie. I'm in this world. It's a world, a vibrant world of people that full of people that actually like that they're in this world, the world of the film. And I don't get that in movies much anymore. What I get in movies is a lot of deadness. It's like there's a new series out on Prime called Tales from the Loop. I actually really like it. I'm really enjoying it. But everybody in the show seems like they're half asleep all the time. And I don't think that, it doesn't feel like an atmospheric touch to me. It feels like what they're trying to do is capture... It feels like they're trying to capture something contemporary. It really does. Because there is this deadness to the culture now. And it's funny, being inside with COVID-19, we've all kind of... I think we've all kind of started yearning for fulfilling life experiences again. We started to realize how much we're cut off from. But, yeah, there is this deadness to culture. And I feel like I'm trying to get my finger on what exactly it is. A dearth of good content, or a lack of good content, is one thing. Celebrating the morbidly fascinating instead of the spiritually uplifting is another one. But and then of course trap beats are probably the worst aspect of it. But there is a sense of cultural deadness now, like there didn't used to be. And I know that, everyone from Oswald Spengler to Aristotle has been complaining about the decline and fall of culture and everything like that. But I think there are some very observable elements in the culture now, unique elements in the culture now. The ubiquitous use of social media and tablets and phones in our lives, for one thing, that sort of thing, and the ease with which gratification is delivered, the ease with which we can all push that dopamine button, I think has contributed to it a great deal. Talking about music, it's like, why would you spend all your time listening, all your time practicing an instrument and accomplishing extraordinary feats of virtuosity when there is endless amounts of fame and recognition and gratification to be found from just mumbling over this beat that goes that sort of thing. It's just a sense of emptiness, a sense of everyone just biting into this narcissistic need for fame and recognition at any price. And with people like Tommy Wiseau, we are paving the path for this to become the way that people get recognition. I mean, think about it. You create things like Vine and TikTok, and people start putting up videos of themselves, stepping on rakes and that kind of, doing other Johnny Knoxville jackass routines and that kind of thing. And it's like we're all racing to be the most pathetic version of ourselves, if that means getting some small amount of recognition. Not too long ago, and I'll wrap this up because it's getting a little long-winded here, but not too long ago, there was a guy named, there's a band called Threaten, spelled Threaten with an I-N at the end, and the lead singer or guitarist was a guy named Jared Threaten, and he booked a European tour by forging the necessary requirements. He created fake concert footage and a fake talent agency to represent him, and just fake everything so that he could convince these prominent venues throughout Europe that his band was worthy of being booked at their venues. And so, of course, what happens is nobody shows up. There's nobody there at all at any of these venues. I've got my foot on the table, so it's rocking back and forth. There's nobody at all at any of these venues, and he basically paid for a series of expensive rehearsals. And that happened, and people are going on and on about, what was he thinking? What was this, that, or the other? And to be clear, by the way, the band Threaten's actual music is not bad. I mean, it's not anything great or innovative, but it's not terrible. It's not terribly done. It's just kind of decent heavy metal music, basically. So I'm not faulting it there, but that whole thing of just this massive worldwide public embarrassment that he created for himself. People are going on and on. What was he thinking? What was he thinking? And I just had this, when I heard about this a couple years ago when it happened, I just had this gnawing thing in the back of my mind where I thought, you know what? I kind of wonder if that's what he had planned all along. Generating so much publicity from this public spectacle that it would, launch off, the next stage of his career and that kind of thing. And, of course, sure enough, as people start to find out about Jared Threaten, they start to look into it, and the people who were involved and the people he hired for the tour, started talking about how he was jerking them around and what a jerk he was to them and all of that. And again, we come back to the same thing, to the same Dunning-Kruger effect. And now Jared Threaten apparently performs on stage with a group. Apparently there are live musicians in there as well, but he has a group of mannequins on stage holding instruments and wearing t-shirts that say fake band, like this is something to be proud of or something like that. But I really think we have got to get away from this as a culture. And it really worries me. I really do. The Doomer generation memes, I think, are very apropos. Because there is a feeling of deadness in the world right now. There really is. People with good content need to step up and start really generating good stuff. That's why I wish David Firth was doing more content than he does. He does about one new animated short every decade now, and he's turning into the Terrence Malick of Flash animation. But we've got to see more good stuff, and we really do need to start making a conscious effort, I think, to get over and ignore cringe culture. And if you don't believe me, if you still don't believe me, what's the most popular thing on Netflix right now? Tiger King. and everybody's fascinated by Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin and all of this stuff. And I tried watching the first episode and couldn't get into it. But, like, we've got to get over Cringe. And there's, and I'm as guilty of this as everybody else. One facet of cringe culture, what I call cringe culture, that I'm fascinated by is the pickup artist fail videos. You can see these pickup artist cringe compilations, they call them, where these, deluded losers get up on, go up to women on the sidewalk or in bars or stuff like that, and they actually, they just fail in spectacular fashion with these women, and go on about what great pickup artists they are. So I'm as guilty of that as the next guy, but it's a really negative, really toxic trend that I think we need to get over. So while Tommy Wiseau has certainly never harmed me personally, and I certainly don't have any reason to have any, I don't wish him ill, I do wish that we as a culture could move on to better things.